Coffee, big cup, and hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Gilmore Way podcast. I'm Laura.
And I'm Kate. And I think you should know that I'm a fan of methodical analysis, bibliometrics, and applying scientific and logical principles to just about anything in an attempt to get as close as possible to objective truth. I know it's not always possible, but sometimes it's just downright fun. Ironically, I hate math and statistics, but sometimes I'll put in the work to put numbers to things and come up with a system to analyze the intricacies of the seemingly ineffable. For example, one time I came up with a scoring and ranking system to evaluate graduate schools, even though in my gut and my soul I knew where I wanted to go. But my ranking system had it come out on top too, which validated my intuition. It was very Rory and Paris of me. It's like take the pro-con list, but make it extra. Even though I've decided librarianship is no longer the path I want to pursue, it was still a valuable exercise to evaluate things methodically like that. And it creates method for the madness. So today, we're going to talk about that time that I decided to finally go through every Gilmore Girls transcript to pull out all the Rory and Jess moments, analyze each one, and figure out if they were ever really good for each other. But how can you mathematically analyze a relationship between two humans, you ask? Look no further than the research of John Gottman and his associates.
But before we get too far into all of the details, this is your friendly reminder that this is a spoilers all podcast. We will be talking about this show from start to finish, including the revival. So if you haven't seen it, again, we question what you're doing with your life, but go back and watch it and then come join us when you're all caught up. And if you could remember to do all of those YouTube things for us, please like this video, subscribe to our channel. It's one click below, and it really does help us out. And we're always so grateful for that support.
Indeed, we are. Okay, so I just want to start this off with a quick overview of Gottman's work because he's one of the foremost experts in relational dynamics and viability. His team has really pioneered the research and models that identify issues in a relationship or a marriage early and even predict its chances long term with surprising, shocking accuracy, like 80 to 90% accuracy. And he's very respected in the field. He's really the gold standard at this point to look at when it comes to talking about relationships. But I'll try to keep this quick because this is not a TED Talk on the Gottman method, but I think it's important to go over some of the key terms and concepts that we're going to be working with as a foundation for viewing Rory and Jess's relationship so we can spot the areas of conflict and the red flags. So his work focuses on divorce prediction and marital stability throughout, through relationship analyses. So he does behavioral interviews, observation, body language, and facial, even the small little facial movements, smiles, and what do you call the nonverbal markers that you see in the face when you're having a conversation with someone that can sort of belie what you're actually thinking. He uses some of those techniques along with surveys and stuff like that to try to get to the bottom of this sort of stuff. He set out to quantify the magic power of relationships by doing this. After his first two marriages ended in divorce, he kind of teamed up with a colleague who had a background in psychology and he had the math. And so they got together to try to come up with models, scales, and formulas to predict marital stability and divorce in couples. He's done 7 studies in this field. And his research concludes that there are 4 main negative behaviors of bad fighting that are most likely to lead to and therefore predict divorce. These are criticism of a partner's personality, contempt, which is usually derived from a position of superiority, defensiveness, which is usually a response to constant criticism, and stonewalling, which is displayed through emotional withdrawal from interactions. So it's like a cascade. It starts with one and gets more serious and more hostile as time goes on because these repeating patterns lead to the reinforcement of these maladaptive mechanisms for dealing with conflict. So it deals more with the process of conflict and less on the content. So in other words, it doesn't matter so much that you're always fighting over who's doing the dishes and the dishes getting done, but rather how you perceive, work through, and respond to the dishes not getting done that matters more. So he developed a model that predicts this with 90% accuracy, which is crazy. And he talks a lot about the positives and the negatives. So on the positive side, you have bids for connection. You turn toward each other. You build a culture of appreciation and admiration, and you treat the other person with respect. You try not to pull away all the time, and you try not to take shots at them as people, but rather frame your conflicts as as actions rather than personality traits, right? But then on the negative side, you've got disrespect, avoidance, criticism, sarcasm, all of these other sort of like negative things that can slowly chip away at your affection and your respect for each other over the years. And it progresses through time in this cascade model of relational dissolution. So you want to make sure that you're having like a number of positive interactions to outweigh the negative ones. And the magic number he came up with there is 5 positive for every 1 negative. Like, it takes a lot of positivity and repair to overcome even 1 bad interaction or 1 negative interactions. So, you know, every time you criticize someone, you start this cascade where eventually the more you do that, the more they become defensive. They respond to pathological criticism. They shift blame. They deflect criticism. They avoid responsibility. And then they move on to contempt, which is like, I'm better than you. I have to guard myself psychologically by being like, you're crazy and I can't deal with you. Sarcasm, cynicism, name calling, eye rolling, mockery, all of that kind of stuff sort of follows on from these early critical behaviors and eventually ends up in stonewalling, which is basically the final stage where there are just so many barriers to interaction with your partner, and communication is either not happening or not happening in any way that's meaningful. So that's sort of an overview of the framework we're dealing with here, where you have this sort of progressive move towards volatility and hostility that you want to avoid. And so, I don't know, I was thinking about this one day and I started seeing some of the behaviors coming from both Rory and Jess and was like, you know what I should do? I should go into the documents, into this, the transcripts of every episode and pull every single scene. And so that's what I did. So now we're going to get into that.
Yeah, but I also just want to say too, one thing that really surprised me as I was reading your notes about some of his work was just how accurate he is in terms of calling couples out on whether or not they're going to sustain their marriage, whether it's going to end in a divorce. The fact that on your average scale that this man is calling these relationships and how they play out with 80 to 90% accuracy, but also pinpointing when that relationship or that marriage will dissolve, whether it's going to be a year into it, 5 years into it, 10 years into it. He was not able to only call it with that percentage of accuracy, but even narrow it down as if to say, like, yeah, you've got X amount of years before it either just works out or ends. If I was sitting down with him as a married person, I would just be like sweating bullets, just being like, whatever he says is probably going to be true right now. So just read me my fortune cookie future on whether or not my marriage is going to make it or break it. And it just made me think that he is literally the Mitchum Huntsberger of the relationship universe, where you're just sitting down and he's going to tell you, like, with your marriage, it's like, do you have what it takes or do you ain't got it? Because he's just calling it spot on and hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah, and he doesn't even have to put in the caveat of, I've been wrong before.
No, because you're usually not, sir. And you have the numbers to back that up.
Yeah, 80 to 90% accuracy. This guy is the GOAT. He should be called John Gottman instead of Gottman. I'm sorry for the terrible pun. I will see myself out now. But Thank you. Anyway, back to the actual analysis side of things. To preface this, I'm just going to say, I understand why a lot of these things happen. So as we go through things, I get it. You know what I mean? Jess has not had a stable, reliable set of attachments in his life, and Rory hasn't had many outside of her mom either. And also, not all of these things are irredeemably bad or make anyone a bad person. Most of us have engaged in similar behavior over the years. It's not an attempt to assassinate anyone's character, but rather to point out moments in the relationship where there was a breakdown, a moment of choice or opportunity that was taken or squandered to strengthen the relationship or to harm it. We're just pointing out the patterns that emerged from a close textual analysis. Most of us don't get the chance to script or analyze our interactions, but this is a chance to observe and learn. So, like I said, Gottman and his colleagues have found that relationships require an average of 5-to-1 positive to negative interactions and feelings. For every conflict or disappointment or red flag, 5 positive things are needed to cancel it out or to maintain that culture of appreciation of the relationship and encourage the couple to keep turning towards each other. So, yeah. And of course, I have to address how I came to these evaluations. This is just one of those things where I got this idea and I was hyper fixated on it for a couple of weeks, and I just like made this whole chart and then I dropped it in here as a script and I was like, surprise, here's an episode. So this is probably going to be a lot of my like random musings that I've been sitting on for months and months and months. But anyway, so like I said, I pulled every transcript for every episode when we were doing our Gilmore's Against Humanity game. So I just basically took through those. I Control F'd Jess's name and took out all of the chunks where it was him and Rory interacting. And then I went through all of that and color coded it red or green, depending on whether it was negatively valenced or positively valenced. Of course, there's going to be some subjectivity in there, but I tried to be as fair and analytical as possible. Some positive moments have more than one good point, and some negatives also have more than one bad point, and also maybe some good points mixed in. I tried not to overdo it or underdo it. I wanted to give credit where it was due, but there were also scenes where multiple dynamics were at play that were a little harder to, parse out. And when it comes to Jess, there were particularly layers of distrust, disdain, jealousy, deceit, sometimes all within a short scene. So, and obviously I have to disclaim that I am Team Logan, but I tried, like I said, to be fair and as impartial as I could be. I do like Jess's character. I just never thought that they had a particularly strong relationship that could sustain itself into adulthood. And obviously we're dealing mostly with like a 17-year-old boy. So all of that has to be put into context before we go through this. But spoiler alert, there are 84 negative things on the list for Jess. But not everything was something he did. Some of them were things he failed to do. And some things were things that Rory did or felt, whether they were justified or not. And it's not just that, like, this is a morally bad thing across the board, but rather this event had a negative impact on their relationship at the time. Or, it's something relatively minor that doesn't seem like a big deal in the moment, but it signals a larger, deeper issue. So it's not like, oh my God, he's a terrible person. It's more just like we're looking very, very closely in black and white at the words on the page instead of kind of taking it in while we're watching it and watching the performances play out and all of that. We're evaluating their relationship, not just them as people and what they objectively did, but their dynamic, how they impacted each other, how they felt in moments of conflict, but also in moments of connection. So, like, how did they interact in the relationship? How did it make them feel? So, relationships aren't always objective. We react to different things in different ways at different times with different people. Something that bugs us might be neutral for someone else. Each person in the relationship can be viewing its health very differently at any given time. But I still think this was a useful exercise to just like pull out their entire relationship from everything else, to isolate it and evaluate it on its merits and dig into things deeper to figure out how everyone's feeling. So got to have those gut checks, because sometimes I think we can get a little bit like wrapped up and hoodwinked by charming people like Milo Ventimiglia. So, and like they were dating in real life. So we're seeing all this chemistry play out on screen, and it's juicy and it's salacious, and it's, the will they won't they of it while she's dating Dean. And so like, it's all fun and games until you do this, until you're actually in a relationship and you look at it like this. So that's where we're starting from. Do you want to start us off with our first interactions with Jess in Nick and Nora, Sid and Nancy?
I would love to do so. And I will say it starts off really, really strong for me, because we see him take a copy of her book and then just put some notes in the margins. And as you and I are both very well-read people, I think we would appreciate that from any partner, because it just shows a commonality right off the bat that, like, I'm a well-read person. This is obviously a person also who enjoys literature, who enjoys reading as well, but who will also have very insightful things to say. So give me my book back, but I will also very much enjoy hearing your thoughts and your takes on the book as well. And I love that moment when Rory realizes what he's done as he's just walking away and leaving their interaction with that, as if to say, like, yeah, put some notes in the margins, have a good night, enjoy reading them. And she's immediately just hooked into, who is this person? I want to get to know him more. Obviously a little bit problematic still at that point in time to start having those inclinations because you are currently not available and in another relationship. But he made a very, very strong start and a very, very strong impact on Rory with that. And I'm here for it. I love it. I think that was a really just nice, sweet gesture to do. And +1 for Jess, whether or not he realized that he was checking off a box right off the bat to begin with in the good column. But what did you think about it?
He probably did because he saw her bookshelf, but also way to plagiarize from my sweater, which, you know, happens to say but yeah, no, I figured this was a good outfit for a literati discussion. But, you know, on the flip side to that, I will dock him a point for trying to bail on the lovely dinner that Lorelai set up and Suki made. You know, he doesn't really understand that he's being super disrespectful in that moment, but it's still kind of awkward and thoughtless given all the effort that was put into it. It's a red flag that he's trying to escape before even giving these people a chance. I think that's kind of an omen, a harbinger of the avoidance and escape to come. But there's like a little bit of contempt in it for her family and friends and his own family, because it's, you know, his uncle who's gone to some trouble to try to make him feel warm in the town. But on the other hand, it's early and he's a teenage boy. So on that note, on Nick and Nora Sid and Nancy, we come out 1-1.
Fair enough. Lead us into our next interaction that we get with Jess in the ins and outs and ins, which it's so hard for me as I was preparing for this to really just try and formulate defenses for Jess because they're going to be few and far between, and I hate that. I will do my best, but talk to us about what we get next after that initial meeting with Jess.
Yeah, a little BTS for TGW. Before we started recording, she's like, I love your notes, but I hate your notes. So, yeah, she hates it when I come in with the cold, hard receipts because it's harder to argue with me when I am this logical. Anyway, so this is the episode where he draws the chalk outline in front of Dosey's and everybody is giving Luke grief about his shenanigans in town. And Rory has to confront him about that. And so I docked him a point, like, because it's clear that his mischief is impacting Luke. And she has to say to him, like, all he does is stick up for you and all you do is make his life harder. I guess that's what you have to do when you're trying to be Holden Caulfield, but I think it stinks. Luke's done a lot for me and done a lot for my mom. I don't like to see him attacked. And I like the way she confronted him here because part of it does feel like valid complaint with an explanation. And it's sort of like, this is how I feel about Luke and about my mom and about this town. And you're not respecting that. But there is like a little tinge of criticism in that where it's like, you're trying to be Holden Caulfield. So there's a tiny amount of ad hominem in there. But I don't love that she has to be the one to like remind him to have a moral compass sometimes and be like, hey, maybe show your uncle some more respect.
Yeah, but I will echo what you said. I do love the fact that she used kind of those sort of I statements going in, and it wasn't just your language, but that's what we do here sometimes. You're a shitty person. You treat your uncle bad. You're treating my mom bad. You treated Suki bad when she came over and she prepared this nice meal for us. Why can't you get it together or be a better person? She made it about how she was responding to those moments. And I don't like that you do this. I wish that you behaved differently. And I think that's really admirable and important for anybody to do within a relationship when you're trying to nicely and maturely call somebody out on their ish that you don't appreciate. So I think it was good that she didn't go on a full frontal assault, but that she still was just able to healthily in that moment communicate to Jess what she saw that she was not liking in that moment.
Yeah. And then I docked him another point for the sort of cheeky, like, see you around. Seems to turn out that way, doesn't it? that was sort of one of the first inclinations that you get, that he's trying to put himself in her path, regardless of how that impacts her relationship. And it's an early goad toward Dean that we know just spirals from here on out. He realizes she has a boyfriend and he's competing with that. And it's very clear that he's going to try to become a thorn in the side from there. And I just, again, don't think it's very respectful. It's like, don't insert yourself into other people's relationships trying to like outdo some other guy. That's just, again, it's immature teenage boy behavior, but I just have to make it red. I have to make it negative because it doesn't respect her and her relationships. And that's just the bottom line.
Yeah, I agree. But shall we move on to our next encounter?
Okay, next up, we have Bracebridge dinner. I'll start off by giving him a point for complimenting the Bayerk snowman. And yes, it is pronounced Bayerk. Something I only figured out recently when Dan and I were watching some music videos, like a variety of different things. But we watched this like BBC Jules Holland thing, and that's how he pronounced it. I was like, what did he just say? And yeah, it turns out it is Bayerk. So Amy needs to get on board and do her research, because I thought she was the queen of cultural references, but apparently if she can't even get that right, I don't know.
My head's also a little bit exploding because I literally just learned that now.
I was today years old when I learned.
Today years old. And Bayerk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Iceland, man. Iceland.
Sure. I mean, I would also say English is not the best language to learn either if you're not a native speaker. So we're not one to talk over here. But anyhow, yes, I will compliment that as well. Bracebridge was really nice. I will say still a little bit of boundary crossing for me, because Jess knows full well that Rory is still in a relationship with Dean at this point, that things are predominantly going well. He's not oblivious to that. So I can't excuse the intrusive behavior in terms of jumping into a sleigh to start inserting yourself into her life. I get that you like what you see, and that's really great, but she's not available right now. And so maybe just try and be a little more respectful and mindful of that, and don't pursue her when she's locked down.
Yeah. The other red flag I have in this episode is definitely fighting Chuck Presby. Like, even if he's a jerk, it's still not really cool. And then he tries to pull Dean into it because obviously he's jealous of Dean, and so why not? I just think that proclivity towards physical violence and that inability to control his impulses is, once again, just, a bad sign. Just, red flag. Red flag.
Oh, the flag's back out.
Yeah. The flag's going to come out a lot tonight, you guys.
Yeah. Anything else to say about that before we move on?
I'll just wrap up by saying, like, this one for me was sort of like a half and half, good and bad. I mean, obviously the snowman thing was cute, and just like you could really feel the tension and the chemistry, the loaded look at the end. It's very coy, just the like they see each other and then Dean sees them seeing each other. That was hot. But yeah, questioning her relationship with Dean and fighting. So we're technically 50-50, but maybe like 60-40 for negative. But just the way that they're counted here, too good, too bad.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But then we move on to Richard in Stars Hollow, and I'm going to give Jess a lot of credit for this one, because Rory is thrust into the limelight in Stars Hollow a lot of times when she doesn't want to be ice cream queen, and now just has her face plastered in the window of Stars Hollow video just because she saw some two young boys looking at a VHS cover that they probably shouldn't have been, questions Kirk about it, and then Taylor seemingly like the very next day or upon the next interaction is just like, you are an admirable stand-up woman, Rory. I wish there were more people like you. So here's the Rory curtain, where we have now moved 90% of VHS tapes behind here. And also just shout out to you. And Rory is very uncomfortable with that sort of spotlight put on her. She's like, I didn't ask for that. I just made an offhand comment about these kids looking at a tape that just had a semi-salacious picture on the front of it. Please, no, thank you. And Jess very much picks up on the fact that she's uncomfortable with it. I chuckle at what he did with switching around VHS tapes. So it's like you thought you were renting like Babe, Pig in the City or whatever, but they're in for a surprise. Sorry for your kids at home for what they're about to see. But it was just a comedic moment. It was just recognizing that Rory was uncomfortable, acknowledging it, and then saying, like, I'm going to try and do something about it because I get that. And so it was a really good perception check.
Yeah. It was a mischievous thing to do, and that's fun for him. But it has the knock-on effect of standing up for Rory when she's too nice and too non-confrontational to plant herself more firmly with Taylor and Kirk and stand her ground, being like, I'm not for censorship. Yeah, all right, agreed. So that's like all thumbs up in Richard and Stars Hollow, ironically. Whoop. All right, moving on. A Tisket, a Tasket. How do we feel about that one?
It's acid in my mouth every single time. To say that he was not perfect, that he was not great. You've got to not go after somebody that's not yours when they are just wholeheartedly not available. You can appreciate Rory's physical beauty, her personality, whatever it is about her. That's totally fine. But when someone is off limits, they're off limits, and you need to know that and respect that. So going into the bit basket, doing what he did, it was juvenile. Oh gosh, this hurts so bad. It was juvenile. It was very malaligned. I hated it. And it made Dean understandably very frustrated and angry. It caused a lot of contention between him and Rory, because now Dean is questioning, why is he doing this? What is going on there? Are there any sort of mutual thoughts or compatibility or just feelings that are starting to be generated here? Yes, Jess is a jerk, but I think Dean is also starting to question, do I need to be worried about Rory? And what about what she's going to start to feel? Just a bad move by Jess to do that. It was just so ugh. And like, yeah, don't do that. I'm going to pull out the flag for that. Don't do that. And then just to even stick it into Dean's face as if to say, well, you know, basket maker. Now she has to have lunch with me.
Dean just didn't bring enough money.
Yeah, Dean just walks away understandably frustrated and pissed off. And he has every right to be. If I was in his shoes, I'd probably be feeling the exact same way. But then we get into their actual lunch date, which is honestly what it ended up feeling like for me. And Rory has a good time, which again is fine. But if you're Rory, you need to start really questioning why you've had such a good time. And is there something going on there in terms of your level of compatibility and what you're starting to feel that you really need to be self-introspective about and honest about with yourself in terms of being fair to your current boyfriend?
All true. This was another one where I was half and half. I had 3 good, 3 bad. So starting with the good, Ernest only has lovely things to say about you. I love that line. Pizza and book buying. It's basically Rory's perfect day and mine too. Let's be real. And last but not least, he gives another try reading Political Nutjob Ayn Rand because she recommended it. You know, he's like, it shows that he's open to her cultural suggestions and is willing to do what it takes to impress her, I guess. But spinning off of what you said, antagonizing Dean by outbidding him without concern for what that will mean for Rory's relationship, because all he cares about is hanging out with her, regardless of what happens after and what consequences she might face from the boyfriend she just made angry. Like, that's not cool. That's poking the bear and then sending the female bear back to the bear cave and being like, I don't care what happens to you. You know, I don't care that I've, thrown a wrench in to your life. All I care about is my own benefit here. He keeps her bracelet. Again, not cool. That's hers. Regardless of who made it for her or how she got it, it's hers. Give it back. And last but not least, like, this is one of the ones where it's very clear that he's only nice to her. And she doesn't realize how big of a red flag that is, that he doesn't respect anyone else or bother to foster any other relationships. She thinks she's seeing this like great side of him, but when it exists only for her, is it even real?
Yeah, no, that is actually an excellent point too, because it is always not about just how you treat your partner, but how you treat people in general. Family, friends, otherwise. And I think this goes for anybody in a relationship, that's really a good marker of judging the person that you're with. It's not just about how they treat you. I want to see, how do you treat your parents? How do you treat your colleagues who you work with every day? How do you treat your own friends or the friends of the person that you're now currently in this relationship with? And if I'm seeing any warning signs there, that's going to be really telling for me. And Rory should have seen those too.
Yeah. All right. Lost and Found. Another 2 and 2 for me. He tries to connect with her by bringing her a Shags CD and just saying, trust me. Like they're starting to build some shared meaning and connecting over shared interests. They're building trust in each other, that they understand each other, by like even as something as small as knowing what kind of music he thinks she'll like. So that's good. And he does eventually make nice with Lorelai because she asked him to. But I need to hear out of your mouth now how he messed up in this episode. I'm gonna need you to go off about that.
You hurt me when you make me do this.
That's exactly the point.
Okay, bruh, return the bracelet. Just give it back. I mean, that has a lot of sentimental value to her, and it just means a lot to her in so many different ways. She was stressing hardcore about it, not knowing where it was. Give it back. But you're like a scientist who has an ant under a magnifying glass, and you're just like, I'm just going to shine some light on it with the direct, with the sun, and just like, what's that line? I think it's from it's Jim Carrey in, is it Liar Liar or is it another? But he's like, people just like watching me squirm. That's kind of what Jess did here. And it's like, if you really cared about this person and you saw how much she was tormented by losing this bracelet, and then the fallout of having to go to her still current boyfriend and be like, I don't know what happened to it. I'm so sorry. Just give it back. It really shows, oh gosh, a lack of care for Rory on Jess's behalf. And yeah, I can't defend it, and nor will I, because you just should have returned it to her as soon as possible, and even just put forth like just an honest, I found it on the bridge. It must have just fallen off or whatever, but here it is. I'm giving it back to you. Don't do just, oh gosh, this hurts. So I hate you.
He should have just dropped it on the floor when he had the chance and been like, is that it? Like, that would have been better than hanging on to it all day and just watching her squirm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, it's sort of like a half and half. I like that he sort of has that little moment of bonding with Lorelai in the kitchen. But the fact that he had to be coaxed into that, even being civil with Lorelai, and again, as a ploy to get Rory to ingratiate himself with her and her mom. Not cool, bro. All right, there's the rub. What did we feel about this one?
I actually was pretty much okay with this episode. I mean, he's doing a lot of really nice things. He understands that Rory is literally like a glutton and will eat her own weight in whatever food you put in front of her. So I think he just offers her a really nice time by just saying, like, I will bring in food. We're just going to hang out. What strikes me here is that I truly believe in my own life. It is very acceptable. And what's the word I'm looking for? Feasible for men and women who are not in a relationship with one another to still have a friendship that can exist outside of any sort of romantic feelings or physical attraction. It can happen, and I think it's an absolutely okay thing. If Jess was going for that here and he was just looking to solidify a friendship with Rory, what he's doing feels a lot more kosher to me. But because you're doing it knowing that you're just trying to slowly chip away at her feelings and steal her away from her current boyfriend, that's where it's going to just like raise my hackles a little bit, because you're being nice, but you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I think it was nice to bring her food and stuff, but he knows what he's doing. He knows that, I mean, he doesn't necessarily know about the boundary she set for wanting to be alone that night. She didn't explicitly state it to Paris or Jess. But he knew what he was doing in the sense that he knew it would antagonize Dean, and it's for his own kicks, you know? He still hasn't considered that Rory has to deal with this guy, leaves her with an angry boyfriend because of what he started. It's not totally his fault because, he can't control how Dean reacts, but he kind of knows how he's going to react. So it's like, again, you know what you're doing. He like drags his feet getting out so that Rory doesn't have to deal with this. He could have made it a lot easier on her, and he didn't. He's entitled to foster a friendship with her, but it wasn't his goal. His goal was to drive a wedge. Let's put it that way. So, yeah. Once again, half and half for me on that one.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, he never considers the fallout of what any of his actions are going to have on Rory and Dean and their continued interactions. And every time he inserts himself, it's just going to continue to drive that wedge between what Rory and Dean currently have going on. And he knows it. And because Jess is not an idiot, so he knows what he's doing. And that's what makes it even more problematic and wrong every time he does it.
Yep. All right. That brings us to dead uncles and vegetables. And I'm just going to go ahead and say, just minus points on this one. He had to be physically drugged to help Luke at the diner after Louis dies, and Luke's frantically planning a funeral, trying to keep the business going, and Jess can't even pull himself away from the TV. So I'm just like, bye, Jess.
Yeah, there's really not too much more to say there other than Luke Danes is not open with his emotions a lot of the time. He's not going to really show when he's struggling, but it's very clear to us that he was, and that he just could have used any sort of support network or person at that moment in time, even in the form of his nephew Jess. So just be there for him, because he's in need of that assistance, and you can't even stop making it about you and start making it about your uncle. Yeah, and when you can't treat your family with respect in that way, no bueno.
Yeah, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that a death in the family is going to be hard on people. And so, they didn't even have to talk about it if he wasn't, thinking about it in that way. He could have just been like, all right, I'm going to help out at the diner. They don't even have to exchange words. They can both just be silent monosyllabic types once more and just get through it, get it done. That's all it takes. And yeah, he couldn't even do that. Like you said, just couldn't even show up for his uncle. But that brings us on to Teach Me Tonight. And I have one positive for this one. And that's him saying, I made sure she was okay. The rest of it is a crapshoot. And once again, I am going to force you to go over all the many things he did wrong in this episode.
Okay, well, I will also start off by saying that I will give him a check mark for hitting the books. For doing...
Did he, though?
Yes, let me
Actually have
have
books.
let me have this one.
I don't think I can because I think you're factually incorrect.
He's trying to study in some sort of capacity. I will give that to him, even if you don't want to. Yes, he is studying with Rory in the diner just to try and, again, create the wedge, insert himself. I get all of that. But Rory, I think, was also just, again, any sort of positive influence that she can try and put on Jess right now. I think she's going to, because I think she's also seeing that he is troubled. He's in need of some sort of any sort of beneficial influence at this point in time. I don't think he's going to be willing to take it from his uncle, because, again, understandably so, a teenage boy is going to be very resistant to authoritative figures and parental influence, even if it is from a positive and beneficial standpoint. I think Rory was going to be the only person who could really make that headway with him. And I think Rory maybe even innately knew that. So she's like, yeah, like, if I can just convince him to hit the books and study for a little bit, I will do it. Obviously, Jess had other intentions to not study for the entire night. They end up, taking her car, wanting to go get some ice cream. Spoilers, obviously, Jess ends up crashing the car. Obviously causes some damage to the vehicle, but Rory ends up with a fractured wrist, which sends Lorelai tail spinning because her daughter is now physically hurt. Goes to Luke, just completely off the rails, about what her daughter is going through. Not really caring at all about Jess. But then circling back to that moment where Luke eventually does catch back up with Jess and finds his nephew sitting on the bridge. And I will, like, obviously, like what you said, highlight that as a really solid moment. The first thing that he says, I made sure she was okay. Not, I'm sorry, I effed up, which I think he knows about himself. But he made it about just, I made sure that Rory's well-being was ahead of the game at that moment in time. And Luke's response, like, he read his nephew and knew that he was truthful in that moment when he said, like, I know that you did. And Luke was obviously going to have some other really hard talks with Jess moving forward about what had happened that night. But he understood that Jess was really tormented, I think, by what had happened, and that he was actually very apologetic and upset about it. And so I will give him credit for that. I will obviously dock him for driving recklessly in terms of consuming food and trying to operate a motor vehicle at the same time. Not really making the evening of studying, which is what it was supposed to have been about, all about that. So yeah, mixed feelings, but I would almost want to give him like 2 points just for genuine care for another human being, because he was very sorry for what he did.
The bar is truly in hell.
You're forcing me to do this, so I will throw brownie points to Team Jess all day, every day, as much as I can, and I will get you back for this when we do this with Logan. But anyhow, go ahead, because I know you have thoughts too.
Yeah. First red flag. Rory asks Lorelai to lie to Dean if he calls while she's tutoring him, which indicates internal conflict about whether this is even an appropriate thing to be doing, and that she feels she had something to hide. Guilt and deception are never good signs, so that's bad. Jess refuses to study. I'm going to push back on you being like, oh, he's studying. No, he's not. He basically refuses to study. He's just sitting there playing with his cards the whole time, even though Rory is taking time out of her own study schedule to help him. He wastes her time and frustrates her because all he cares about is ingratiating himself with her, which kind of, like, again, if you're looking at this at like a higher level, it kind of expresses contempt for school and for studying, which is something she cares deeply about. It's not direct contempt for her as a person, but his attitude towards something that she values is not a good sign. So when someone feels like they're above something that you think is important, that's often not going to make for a good match. Like if they're not aligned on the importance of that, again, red flags. And then, when it comes to the reckless driving, I also think that this is like not so much part of this discussion, but just sort of like general theory feels like a strong word, but he was trying to eat ice cream and like taking his hands off the wheel. And so it makes me wonder if Rory's reaction to it in the following episode, when everybody was just like, oh, he's a terrible guy. Like, I wonder if her insistence that he was fine and that it was an accident caused by an animal was downplaying his impulsive behavior because she felt responsible for telling him to keep driving in the first place. So I feel like she's had to take on a lot of guilt, even though nobody's blaming her. And it probably was an external stimulus that made it so that he had to swerve, but like he wasn't driving carefully. And they might have ended up like that even without a possum or whatever it was that made him crash. So not a big fan of that. And like, I feel like you missed like the big obvious, like grande red flag. Jess leaves and doesn't say goodbye for the first time. And Rory has to find out from Patty and Babette gossiping that her friend has left.
Okay, but I will just a little bit try and go to bat for him and say that we were still in the age of not being so digitally accessible to any one person at any given time. He left same day, same night. Like, he was gone pretty instantaneously. So there was no way to just send an Instagram post or like a Facebook message or DM and just say, hey, I'm out. Like, there was really no, I mean, yeah, like he could have, I guess, called the house phone for the Gilmores
and
at that time.
Picking up.
Yeah, and just, hi, sorry, I know it's like 11 at night. Is Rory awake? Is she there? Can I tell her that I'm about to dip out? Like, what would that phone call have been like? You know, there was no good way to communicate that, even if he had the ability to do so. So, yeah, like, is it good to do what he did? No, it obviously caused Rory a lot of pain. She was obviously very... It was written on her face to Lorelai, at least when that became known, when she ends up hearing it from Babette and, you know, has to hear it third hand that way. But I can't really dock Jess so much for it as a true red flag, because there was just no really good way to communicate that at that point in time, nor did he have time to do so.
I mean, yeah, Luke does kind of put him on a bus right away, and going to the Gilmore house or calling would set off Lorelai for sure. But like, Babette and Patty said like the kid wanted to go, you know, like he wanted to leave. He wanted to run away from the accountability of all of this. And if he had still been in town when Dean came back, like he knew that he would have had his ass whooped if he was still around when Dean came back. I'm surprised Dean didn't whoop his ass later. Like, oh boy. So I think it's a little bit of both, where like if he had really wanted to, he could have been like, Luke, can you please just like let me go for 5 minutes to like tap on her window and tell her I'm leaving. I don't want to leave like this. I want to make sure she's still okay and tell her myself that I have to go. But he didn't, because, you know, he was 17 and he didn't have the emotional range of a teaspoon required to even say goodbye. And that takes us into the next episode, where I dock him a point for her kind of expressing to him explicitly that she goes to New York because he didn't say goodbye, and her need for closure, for lack of a better term, caused her to miss her mom's graduation.
Okay, but that feels like to me that's just more on Rory. Like, yeah, Jess dipped out, but you were not in any sort of solidified romantic relationship at that point in time. You had a friendship that was just built a lot around a lot of really gray area and problematic things. Jess didn't owe you the full goodbye that I think that Rory was expecting. So for her to go to New York and then dump on all that guilt and say, I'm here because you didn't do this. Again, problematic statement on Rory's part, because she's casting all of that blame on Jess and saying, I'm here because you did wrong, not because I felt the need to have more closure. And now I'm missing out on a very important life moment for my mother because of something that you did that was wrong. No, it was Rory's choice to go there and miss the graduation. That is fully on her, but it's just not the first time, not the last time, but Rory casting blame on others for her misgivings because she doesn't want to ever reconcile the fact that she did something wrong innately on her own.
Yeah, that was an interesting one because she did take some responsibility for it when she talks to Lorelai at the end and is like, I'm so sorry, it's all my fault. I will ground myself. And, all of these self-flagellatory things that she says to Lorelai at the end there. And, that's why that's made the list. It's not just the things that Jess did or didn't do, but like I said, it's sort of their relationship as a whole, their dynamic. He ghosted, which is part of his pattern, and it caused her to need some furtherance of the relationship on some level, like the goodbye or the one last hurrah, whatever it was in her mind that she needed that caused her to skip school. Like you said, it was entirely her choice. But that's part of the problem. It's not just Jess misbehaving in this relationship. She does too. So like I said, in the description of this, that's part of it. But
yeah, no, I agree. But I would still fault Rory more for that than I would Jess.
Yeah, but it does come about because he ghosted her essentially. So, well, I guess he called once, and she lied about it to her mom. Rory, yeesh. But
yeah, not good. But let's move on to the next encounter that we get, when obviously he comes back to Stars Hollow. Talk to me about that, and I can't get started.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they had a ton of fun in New York, and I think it made him miss her. So I give him a point for like the nice day that they had in NYC because that did show some connection and banter, chemistry. All of it was there in that episode, and so it's nice to see him move back to Stars Hollow for her. He knew what he was getting into. He knew he'd be signing up for Uncle Luke's rules and continued antagonism with Dean, but he did it because he wanted to keep that friendship and have that chance at the relationship, and so he went back to somewhere he didn't love, somewhere he wasn't welcomed and wanted, somewhere he thought was boring and stupid for her, which is kind of sweet in its own way. But I also got to dock him a point for showing up at an event where she's supposed to be a bridesmaid when she's there with her boyfriend. What exactly was he expecting to happen there? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me there is she is still off limits. If I'm just rolling back up into town, one of the first questions that you need to ask, I think, is, are you still with Dean? And if the answer is yes, then you need to respect that and realize that she is still not available. And like, great, you're back in town. You've returned to your this is hell place. But take a step back, just monitor the situation from the outside, realize that maybe all you can still have with her right now is a friendship, if that, and just be cool about that. But to roll up to that event and then to have it end up with a kiss when, again, you know that she is not available, that will never sit right with me, regardless of whom is doing it to whom. Like, off limits, respect that somebody else is in a relationship, even if you want to be in a relationship with them. It's enabling like that beginning and those entry steps into like cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not okay. And it's not okay for what it is and will do to Dean down the line.
Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility on Rory for that one because she was the one who initiated the kiss. So once again, it makes the list kind of for both of them. But I only gave it one negative point as a combined event instead of, I could have separated them and been like, Jess messed up and Rory messed up. I think Jess was like less wrong, I guess, for showing up at the wedding. But then again, he was not invited. And actually, Luke told him that she and Dean were still together. So like he knew that going there, they would probably be there together. So like, again, I don't know what he was trying to accomplish, but It is what it is.
But then we move into Lazy Hazy Crazy Days, where obviously Rory goes to do her own thing in Washington. But talk to me a little bit about that, because the first question that I want to ask is, did Rory or Jess, even still at that point in time, following the kiss, but not being in a solidified relationship with one another yet, did either one of them owe the other party something in terms of a level of communication?
I wouldn't say they owed each other, but, you know, on at least some level, they seem to try to be friends. And so I think that there's at least a level of like, you should have done a little better. Whether you owed them anything is almost beside the point. I think there's a lot of transactional issues with their relationship. And so it kind of feeds into that problem where the concept of owing someone something in a relationship is maybe not even a great way to frame it to begin with, because it's just one of those things where it's like, well, if you want to respect your friendship with someone, then, you know, at least try. Like, they went like 2 or 3 months without speaking after she kissed him and ran away from him. So, you know, in a way, like you said, I think she maybe did owe him, in a sense, just slightly better behavior. But I mean, I think that's just sort of like common human decency, as opposed to like, she owes me something.
Yeah. And then we have Jess's reaction, obviously, when she returns from her time in Washington, D.C. I will give him a little bit of credit for feeling how he's feeling. You go from coming back to having Rory kiss you, and again, she instigated that. She instigated that moment, and then just immediately to dropping off the face of the planet for a couple of months and not hearing anything. Again, what Rory may have owed Jess in that moment was not a full-on anything, but just to immediately then do a reverse sort of ghosting, and just not even reach out, you know, and say like, hey, like, maybe even I'm sorry about the kiss because I'm still with Dean, so I shouldn't have done that because it's leading you to have really just intense feelings right now that I can't reciprocate because I'm still in this relationship and I messed up and I shouldn't have done that. Any semblance of that from Rory, I think, should have been put forth. But for her to just immediately be like, no, I can't contend with any of that. I can't confront any of that right now, which is Rory's MO, because she's just not good at any level of confrontation, even within her partners, which is super problematic. But to do what she did was not fair to Jess. So I think he is within the right to feel bitter when she returns. And he's right to say, like, I didn't hear from you for 3 months. What am I supposed to make of that? What did you want from me?
Yeah. I mean, that's skipping ahead a little bit because that confrontation actually doesn't happen until Haunted Leg. But, you know, going back to Lazy Hazy Crazy Days, like for me, this one's all negative on that front. Like, she ghosts him all summer. She wants to communicate, but she doesn't. She can't find the words. She can't admit to herself what needs to be said. Jess, he's entitled to date someone else, but he does admit later, at least, to using Shane as a placeholder, basically, because he can't have the girl he wants. And he flaunts it in public. I mean, granted, he didn't maybe know specifically that Rory would be at that very event. He may not have known her travel schedule and that she was going to be there, but you know, the very public nature of their relationship and all of that, I think partially was just to send a message to the town about like, this is my girl, that, you know, Rory would eventually come back and at least hear that chatter. But then she is contemptuous towards Shane. You know, she's contemptuous to who Jess decides to associate with. And sprinkled in, it's just a nice little dose of internalized misogyny because she's jealous. So I don't like the way she treats Shane in that situation. So again, docking a point for her in just, again, being unable to express herself appropriately and contextualize this as, I have a boyfriend. And on that note, Lorelai has to call her out for not being fair to Dean. There's that whole, like, you got to make up your mind. It's enough already. if you want Jess, go get him. He's right there. Just
break it off.
That girl.
But break it off with Dean first. Like, be fair to your current partner. Yeah. And Lorelai was actually like, she was fully right in that, if you're ready to move on from a partner, that's fine. But be fair to the partner that you're ready to break it off with and tell them.
Exactly. So for me, that's a total of like 4 negative points between the two of them, just for lazy, hazy, crazy days. And yeah, you touched on the haunted leg of it all, where, Rory ghosts him all summer and then is snippy with him because she can't handle her own emotions. And Jess responds with with jealousy and derision as well. And, good on him for confronting her. But when he does it, there's a lot of contempt in it. He's like, you come back, I'll put out because I didn't just sit around and wait for you like Dean would have done. And yeah, what about Dean? Are you still with him? Because last time I checked, you were, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary. Plus, the two of you walking around the other day like some damn Andy Hardy movie seemed to me like you're still pretty together. I half expected you to break it into a barn and put on a show. Like, again, we love the snark. It makes for fun television. But like, imagine if you were on the receiving end of that, like, you would feel pretty much like you want to put up a wall against that person because they're, I get why she's having trouble accepting that this is the guy that she has feelings for, because he's right, and she doesn't like that he's right, and she doesn't like that he's putting her and Dean down in the process to get that point across. He could have done a better job of it that didn't involve the attacks. But again, he's 17. He doesn't know any better.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I've made my piece and I've said what I had to say about that. So we move forward and truck on ahead to the next, I think, very brief interaction here that we get in 8 o'clock at the Oasis. But how did you feel about that?
This was all green lights for me. Like, she didn't even ask him to help, and he just springs into action. He just does it. She doesn't even have to be like, oh, I can't find Dean. Can you help me? Like, he's just like, let's go. So I like that one. And we get to see wet Milo Ventimiglia.
Which, who is ever mad about that?
Nobody, ever.
No, nor should he be. There's really not too much to say there. Just a very brief, solid thumbs up Jess moment. But then we move ahead into take the deviled eggs. Holy passive aggressiveness. But again, we're still dealing with teenagers here, so I don't know what we should be expecting. Again, from a comedic standpoint, devil egging someone's car is
petty
weirdly
perfection.
Hilarious. Also, just I feel in the back of my mind like I can smell it, and it's terrible. But also, just the moment of having Jess come out and being like, someone devil's egged my car. Like, amazing. Chef's kiss. Not condoning that behavior, but it's funny and I can appreciate it. Not good. Still a red flag. Still a no. But there were just a lot of emotions that both Rory and Jess were needing to contend with. And I don't think they knew how to handle appropriately at that moment in time. So it was just Rory's own way of getting it out.
Yeah, that is paprika. And the other thing that stood out to me about that interaction is Lane's involvement and her sort of getting her hackles up because of the way Jess has been treating Rory. Lane and Jess never really did get on very well. And I think maybe we'll talk about this a little more in a few minutes, but I think she kind of had to tiptoe around the situation, and they didn't really hang out all that much as couples and friends. So, when the people in your life are pointing things out to you and are having negative reactions to your partner, again, red flag. Maybe listen to the people who have known you your whole life and care deeply about you and can see this more objectively than you can, because they might have some good insights for you that you're missing. So Lane, maybe again, with Lane's character being an enabler later on, like, this is jumping way ahead, but to, the end of season 4, when Jess comes back to town and she's just like, how was it? Like, what happened? As opposed to being like, no, don't you even go there. She could have been much firmer with Rory about like, this is really not a good idea. I've seen where this leads and it's not good for anybody. But she doesn't. So she's a big enabler, but she does have some good moments where she tells Jess off. So
yeah, no, I agree. And I think you make an excellent point about needing outside perspective when you're in a relationship. Sometimes people can just see things that you can't recognize yourself. And I think Lane definitely saw it within Rory's relationship. So it was a good call out moment there. Mm-hmm. But that does move us ahead into They Shoot Gilmore, Don't They? Which, I mean, this episode is not about Dean, but Dean was a total D-bag in that episode with how he ended that relationship. There was a lot of just jealousy, male egos raging. Jess was certainly not scot-free or blameless as well. But talk to me about the breakup first and foremost at the dance and Jess's response to it with regards to how Dean ended it and whether or not it's a good or a bad thing in terms of just how Jess responded to that particular moment, because it is very volatile.
Yeah, I mean, Jess shows up to this thing basically just to taunt them. Like, he has no interest in the dance marathon. He knows that they're participating and sits there staring at her. And then when he catches her eye, he starts making out with his girlfriend. Like, party foul, Jess. And I don't necessarily blame Dean for reaching his breaking point with the disrespect and how blatant they're being about this. He could have been more delicate in, like humiliating her publicly. But I think in some ways Rory brought that upon herself because she couldn't let it go. She kept harping on seeing that. Like, she was actively talking about this, like, don't they know what they look like just sitting there? Like, I wish they would just leave, like Shane concerns everyone. She's just being so gross and I hate it. And so Dean was not wrong to break up with her. He was still kind of a jerk throughout this episode, granted, and he could have ended the relationship with a little more dignity, but Rory didn't treat him with much dignity. And so she kind of had what was coming to her in that way. And if she hadn't been so disrespectful, and if she had just like followed her gut and ended things with him amicably before it got to this point, like, they could have salvaged a much better ending for themselves. So don't love that. But I do like how Jess reacted in the sense that he went to her to call him a jerk and sort of like, he's like, I'm sorry that he did that to you that way. That wasn't cool. And I will give him props for breaking up with Shane officially before doing anything else with Rory.
Yep. Just did what Rory always should have, which is don't get with the person that you want to be with until you break it off with the person that you are currently with. Thank you. Next. We've said it a little bit before, but Rory missteps a lot as a girlfriend and as a partner to other people. And she really stepped it in here, but just did the 1,000% right thing with just telling Shane, like, I'm done. You may not love it. It's probably going to suck, but kudos to him for just shutting that down before you move on to the next person, because that's just what people deserve.
Yeah, it's true. All right, that brings us to Let the Games Begin, where they officially get together. And I will say this one's more positive than negative for me. I think their first interactions as a couple are very cute. The kiss by the gas pump is epic. Well, whatever else happens between us, at least we know that part works. Come on. And it seems like he quits smoking for her, because I don't think we ever see him smoke again. So I dig that. But it does cause some tension with Lorelai. Did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. And again, like, Lorelai's been there with guys. I mean, you don't get pregnant at 16 because you don't love guys.
Because you're indifferent to guys.
Yeah. So I think she is seeing a lot of appropriate warning signs with Jess that she's just trying to make sure that her own daughter is aware of. And I think she's good and in the right to kind of warn Rory about, like, hey, like, just be a little bit careful here. I respect your autonomy and I respect the decisions that you're going to make. But if people in your life are seeing not so great things about your partner, maybe try and just be like a little bit cognizant of that. I'm also never going to love the fact that, again, that he caused you bodily harm through his inaction with operating a motor vehicle. But I think Lorelai is just trying to, as nicely as she can, just play the mom card and be like, look, you're my kid. At the end of the day, your well-being is always going to matter first and foremost to me. Just be careful with this guy because he's not perfect. And there are just a lot of things here that you need to just be careful about.
Yeah. When one of the most important people in her life sees the red flags and expresses her concern multiple times, only to be stonewalled by Rory, like that's not great. Like this is an instance where it's Rory who is avoiding the reality, shall we say, and avoiding taking in other people's perspectives, people who have been there, done that, and may have some valid concerns. So not great on Rory's part on that one. And speaking of, moving into deep fried Korean Thanksgiving, I also don't love that she kind of continues that defensiveness a little bit in feeling the need to censor her relationship with Jess at first because of the perception of the town and of Dean. She says she doesn't want to flaunt it, and it feels like she can't even commit with conviction because she's worried about how the town perceives him and how their perceptions of her might change because of this. She's like, if she's worried about external validation, they're constantly going to be fighting that battle in the court of public opinion because of his behavior, and that's not good.
Yeah, and it makes me think about what Babette and says at the end when the first time that Jess leaves, and they're just like, well, what will we ever do for any entertainment around here? Yeah, Jess has a reputation in the town for a reason. He honestly has earned it. I'm not gonna like sugarcoat that. Like, it is what it is because he's done some questionable things. But that's your guy now, Rory. And if that's who you're choosing to be with, you just need to like stand up for your man almost and be like, this is my choice. You guys may have a lower perception of him or possibly an even incorrect one, but this is who I'm going to be with now. So if you care about me, just respect my decision. And if I was Jess, I'd be affronted by the fact that my now girlfriend needs to hide or even tone down expressing the fact that we're together or any sort of PDA. And like, I'm not saying to go overboard with PDA and just like make out in front of everybody all the time to like illustrate that point that you're together. But you don't need to, like what you said, censor it in terms of hiding it from the town. Trust that the townsfolk love you enough to be receptive of your choice.
Yeah. And the other thing I don't love about this episode is him taunting Dean again at the end of the night. And the reason that he cites for not wanting to like fight him is that Rory will blame him and think he started it, as opposed to, fighting is wrong and not resorting to assaultive behavior to solve your problems. So, yeah, his motivations for stuff are completely driven by Rory, and that's not good. Like, she is his moral compass. Again, there's no independent care there for anything, including his own well-being. And that's not good. He's, that again, transferring nicely into That'll Do Pig. It's, him saying, like, I'm not going to go with you because I already got you, basically. It's the whole, you're mine now, so I don't have to continue to put in the work to spend time with you and to do things that you like to do. It's again contempt for her interest and the town and the disrespect of treating your partner worse once you get them. It's gross.
Yeah. The effort, again, both ways, guys, girls, whomever, when you're in a relationship with somebody, the effort doesn't stop just because you now got them. It's such a disingenuous thing to do to your partner. You care about that person. It doesn't stop now that you're just because you're in a relationship with them. So everything is easy. I don't have to really try anymore. as almost for me, like, even grounds for, like, ending it, just because, like, if you're never going to put forth the effort anymore, then, like, why am I even still going to be with you? I just, like, I hate it. And if I was Rory, I would question it. And Jess needs to realize, like, this town means a lot to her. The people mean a lot to her. This is who she is. Luke unpacks all of that for Jess very concisely when he says, look, Rory's a package deal. She's always going to have people that come along with her. The mom's always going to come along. The grandmother's always going to come along. In effect, Stars Hollow and the townies are always going to be a part of that equation. So if you want to fit in with this girl and if you want to be with her, you need to consider all of that. And the fact that Jess is not willing to do it and just says, like, oh, well, I got her. I can stop trying now. Holy moly. Just no.
Yeah. I had 5 red flags in this episode. So obviously the first one is saying, I'm not going to go with you because I already got you. Number 2, he only agrees to accompany her to mark his territory when he thinks she's going with Dean. Gross. She tries to talk him into it once more right before, and after he turns her down, he sees that she might spend the evening with Dean and Clara, and then Rory says, like, you don't have to go, we can meet later. And, like, a lot of this too comes out from the fact that he's concerned that Rory hasn't told him that she's on friendly terms with Dean again. Like, he finds out that they'd had pie and coffee together, and is jealous, and again, marking his territory. So, like, she feels like she has to continue to rope him in and convince him to spend time with her, and he only agrees because he's jealous and worried. So that's bad. And then on top of it, he confronts Dean about his friendship with Rory while pretending not to be mad about it with her. Like, he confronts Dean in the school. He's constantly contemptuous of Dean, someone Rory cares about regardless of their romantic status at this point. Like, this is her friend, and he's still, like, even though he's, like, won, he still can't let it go. Like, he pretends he's trying to be the bigger person, but he's not.
Yeah. Not the best episode all around for Jess, in terms of any redeeming moments. And again, I will just say, like, when you're with somebody, the effort train does not stop just because you got them. Like, relationships, whether you're dating, whether you're engaged, whether you're married to somebody, and even after you enter into that marital status, like, show your partner you care. If you're going to stop trying, like, your relationship will suffer.
Yeah. I mean, on the positive side for that episode, the physical chemistry was off the charts. The, like, making out through town bit was pretty cute. I mean, you know, a few days ago, she was worried to be seen kissing out front of Dosey, and now she's just, like, vertical from here to eternity moment all over the town square. But it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Teenage hormones, I guess. I don't know. Get it out. Now you're okay with marking your territory. I don't know. It's a 180, but sure. We're here for it. But that leads us into Lorelai out of water, unless you had anything else to say there.
No.
Shout out to Lane. And we've talked about this, but sometimes it takes a lot of external perspective to really call out red flags within a relationship. And sometimes it can even be really scary to do when you're that outside person. But Lane had a lot of gumption, as if to approach her best friend and say, like, listen, I don't like the guy that you're with. And that can be really difficult to say, because your best friend can take it wrong and say, like, well, why don't you like him? You know, what is it that you're not seeing that I am? Rory could have responded really bad to that. So I think I just have to give Lane a lot of credit there for being really transparent in that moment and just saying, like, I want to like him, but I just can't right now. But even expressing that she's going to give Jess the opportunities to rectify that and to try and change and to have Lane be on a more receptive end. I know this isn't about Lane, but I have to shout her out because I think it was just a really solid bestie moment.
Yeah, it's just a lot of eggshells that Rory is walking on because she knows her best friend doesn't like her boyfriend, and it's like it's awkward. And the fact that you have to be so defensive about your choice of boyfriend probably should be a red flag to you, Lorelai, little Lorelai. You know, he's not making an effort to be friends with your friends. And I think back to instances where Dean and Rory and Lane all hung out together, and you know Dean and Lane had a little bit of a rapport going between themselves when Rory wasn't there at times. And so the same thing cannot be said for Jess. Jess didn't seem to respect Lane or put any effort really into maintaining any kind of friendliness with her, except slightly later when Lane is in the band and they're about to have their first gig, like when you skip ahead to Keg Max. But I don't even know if you can really like count that, because it's Rory being like, hey, come over to my house and listen to some music. Like, I don't know. But at least he says some nice things about Dave and the band. So yeah, that's jumping ahead a little bit, but
yeah. No, but I think that pretty much does it there. And we can move on to Swan Song, because a lot happens this episode that I think we're going to have to comment on. So kick us off with that. Start with anything good that you found with Jess in that episode.
And then one good thing.
One. You're killing me, Smalls.
Despite the fact that he was jealous about her friendship with Dean, his reaction about the whole like buckle up, I'm Patty issue was actually pretty good. What he says to her is, just tell me about it so I don't have to read about it on telephone poles. And I think it contrasts nicely to Dean's explosive anger whenever anything bad happened with Rory. Like when she kicked up a friendship with Jess, Dean was not having any of it. He was very explosive, very volatile around that. Jess has his moments where he's suspicious and a little passive aggressive about it, but he does eventually take her at her word that she will tell him this kind of stuff in the future, and he moves past it, which exhibits a building of trust there that obviously doesn't last very long. But that's all I got for positive stuff. So once again, I'm going to be like, hey, Laura, what went wrong in this one? Because I need to hear it from your lips.
I will pay you back for all of this. Just you wait. Just you wait. First off, when your girlfriend is like, hey, it's really important to me that you meet my family and get to know them, because again, harking back to what Luke said, Rory is a package deal, and those family members are going to come right along with her as a make it or break it sort of aspect to the relationship. When your girlfriend says, I need you to come over and meet my grandmother because it means a lot to me, I kind of have already said yes, but this is just something that needs to happen. And Jess is immediately like, no. Red flag. Red flag. And then Rory has to essentially bribe him to make it happen with a book, with more PDAs, with a potential $5. If you're Jess, like, yeah, it may not be the event that you want to go to and not how you want to spend your Friday night, but do it. Because it means a lot to the person that you're with. It's not like she's asking you to chop your arm off. Just go to a dinner, have a nice meal, be cordial, be friendly, and do it. So the fact that Jess was immediately bucking at it, but then had to be bribed into doing it and almost coerced in that sort of way, and that they're bargaining and using these bargaining chips with one another as if to say, like, if you do this, I'll do this. And then if you do this, I'll do that. Not healthy within any sort of relationship.
Yeah, it goes back to the transactionality that I was talking about earlier. That sort of tit for tat is not true compromise or doing things because they're important to your partner. They make the relationship transactional, like quid pro bro. I will only do this if you do something for me in return. And that's not how a good, healthy relationship should work.
Yeah. And then obviously talk to me again about how, like what actually happens when that dinner plays out. And Jess obviously does not show up on time. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, I know. But talk to me about your reaction to the dinner itself when he eventually does go to Emily's.
Yeah, I'm counting 9 more separate red flags. So like 10, I think. This is by far the chunkiest episode with the most to break down. But I'll try to breeze through these. So he's late to dinner and won't give a straight answer about how he got a black eye. He's majorly deflecting. He's defensive in this moment. He's like, I'm in a crappy mood. Traffic sucked. Traffic I hit going to a function I didn't particularly want to go to, and I'm thirsty and I'm hungry, so let's eat. He's just like, you dragged me here and now I'm mad. So like, don't even go there with me. He won't let it go. Or sorry, she won't let it go. And so Rory jeopardizes his first impression on her grandma because she's suspicious and untrusting. And then if you actually read the dialogue of the scene and aren't swept up by the comedic delivery of the actors, Jess is kind of a dick. Like, not directly to Emily exactly, but he is snarky and he is curt. And, you know, just a couple word responses to her questions. And like, she's trying. She is putting on a show. She needs an Oscar for the performance of a lifetime for pretending to give a shit about Jess. And yet, you know, the first time he meets his girlfriend's grandma that she loves, and he's not really like trying a little harder to not be an irreverent little shit. So like, just for one evening, he could have put on the Ritz, and he just couldn't do it. I mean, I get it. He's in a bad mood. We've all kind of been there, but he could have been a little bit better. He could have like tried to brush it off, but obviously we're watching a comedy. It's supposed to be funny, but if it were real life and that were my boyfriend, I'd be pissed, you know, like just the back and forth between them of like her not believing him and snipping with each other, having to leave the room to have an argument in the study. Emily's reaction to it when she calls Lorelai, and you know, she's not wrong. Like the attitude, I wanted to slap that monosyllabic mouth of his. But then on top of that, he bails and turns it all back on her. More defensiveness. Like, if you're going to harp on this, I'm leaving. Oh, great. So now I have to explain to my grandma why my boyfriend, who showed up a half hour late with a black eye, is walking out. Well, you like making up stories in your head, so that should be easy for you. No bueno. Rory has to go to Dean to confirm Jess's denial of their fighting, and only believes her boyfriend once Dean swears to it. She has to go outside of her relationship to be able to trust the information. That's bad. That's a big red flag. Rory calls the diner to work things out with Jess, and he tells Luke to lie to her and say he's not there. So, major stonewalling going on there. Luke tries to talk some sense into him, and he's like, she'll find me. He's like, what are you going to do? Just keep avoiding her and never take her calls again? Like, I'm not a wuss like Dean. Again, with the contempt and the defensiveness and the stonewalling. Like, this is by far the worst that it happens. And then, to cap it off, he ultimately lies to her. He could have just given her a BS answer if that's what he was going to do all along to prevent the initial conflict. Like a little white lie to avoid having to tell an awkward story, as long as it's not a problematic story. Like, in this sense, he got beaked by a swan. It's stupid and maybe embarrassing, but it's not the end of the world. And so it's like, it has nothing to do with their relationship. It has nothing to do with Dean. So if he wanted to tell the football story, why couldn't he have concocted that? Why couldn't Big Brain Jess have concocted that the night before and been like, sorry, babe, like I was playing football and I got a black eye playing football once. I ran into somebody else's shoulder. Actually, no, I got a black eye once and a concussion once. So yeah, anyway, I did get a black eye playing football, smacking into somebody. So like, he could have easily said that. He could have said he got hit in the face with a ball or ran into someone and that it wasn't a big deal. And like, the substance of the lie wouldn't impact the relationship whatsoever. There are times when you have to reveal embarrassing details about your life to a partner, but there are other times where I think like, you don't have to tell them every embarrassing story ever, as long as it's like not actually going to, like, as long as the lie of omission is not substantive and doesn't impact your relationship self. Like, it'd be much worse if there was something embarrassing that does impact your relationship, like an STI or something. But in this case, the swan had nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? And so like, he could have done this sooner and avoided all of it, but then we wouldn't have an episode of television to watch. So, but the way he does it, okay, I'll tell you the truth since we're so into the truth tonight. That's what good relationships are about, right? And then he's ultimately trying to rebuild lost trust on a lie. And to make it even worse, as if it wasn't already terrible, they start making out. And this is where she starts to think, I'm getting ready to sleep with this guy. She was hoodwinked into trusting him, so much so that she's starting to consider moving into a more serious, physical, intimate relationship based on a dishonest moment of connection. If I had a microphone that I wasn't using and wasn't going to make an awful, awful sound, I would drop it right now.
As you rightly should, because damn, yeah. And as just a lover of Gilmore Girls and as a viewer of the show, I will just echo what you said. Like, I am horrified just as a spectator watching Rory, maybe even now as someone, like when I was watching the show, I was a teenager, so maybe I didn't grasp the horror. But as someone who is now more middle-aged, just seeing her and just being like, that's what's going to get you to sleep with him?
Girl.
Oh my gosh. Like,
it's so bad.
Nope. Kudos to anybody in like a secondary or post, like just high school education system. Like, it just makes me think now to like high school teachers who have to teach sex ed, just being like, oh gosh, this is terrifying.
You will get gonorrhea and die. Or was it chlamydia? I can't remember.
I think he probably used both at some point.
Probably. Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, Rory, just do better. Jess, do better. You can do better. I'm not even going to go there right now because that's not a reason to sleep with somebody, but we're going to move on because we need to. We're going to head right into Face Off. I love Rory's backbone in this episode because it's like, girl, where has that been for seemingly ever, but now at least for a minute period of time, you finally found it. And I love the fact that she is able to take Lorelai's advice, being like, this dude is not giving me the time of day. He is not caring about me, and having that consideration to even call me and say like, hey, I just can't hang out tonight, whether it's I'm not feeling well, I need to work late, whatever it is. But I love that she takes Lorelai's advice and just goes to the hockey game with Lane, and just does something outside of her relationship for once, which is healthy because it can't always be about your partner. Like, don't forget that, like, yeah, you still have Lane, you still have Dean, who you have this weird, if not awkward, sort of friendship with at this point in time. But there are other activities in Stars Hollow that you can be doing on any given night that don't involve Jess. So good on you for finding something else to do that's a healthy, productive use of your time. So shout out. And I think it's also very good that she's taking what Lane and what Lorelai are saying to her as if to say, like, hey, like, you deserve better than what Jess is giving you right now. And I love the fact that she's able to call him up and just say, again, making it not you statements, but I statements, as if to say, my needs are not being met right now. I'm not feeling okay about this. I really expected you to call and at least tell me what was going on because you said that you were going to. And now on top of that, like, I'm just left feeling this type of way. I need you to do better in this relationship. And it's just not, again, shitting on him and saying, like, you're a terrible human being. But she's having her needs communicated so that they can be met by Jess on the reciprocal end of things. Go Rory.
I partially agree with you and partially have to disagree with you. And this is jumping ahead a little bit to my last red flag, because obviously I did this all chronologically as I was going through the transcripts. But Rory eventually lets him off the hook without confronting him or saying all of this truly to him, and without demanding an apology because of the distiller's tickets. And if you'll recall, she says, when you get home, could you erase your answering machine without listening to any of the messages? That'd be great. Thanks. She feels embarrassed about standing up for herself. And then later she also like says to her mom, like, I was that girl, you know, I was the one who was tolerating the bad behavior because of the distiller's tickets. Like, I I caved and I forgave him. Like, the fact that she feels like she has to retract those statements or hide them from him just because he comes with his tail between his legs and a pair of tickets. Like, you were so close, Rory. If you would just like actually let him hear that rant, like, he still needed to hear it. So don't tell him to erase the machine. Like, I know you want to sweep it under the rug and move on, but like, he still needs to hear it. So, like, yeah, in this episode, he's terrible at making plans. He's not calling her. He couldn't even like take a moment to like pretend to go to the bathroom, be like, I gotta pee, like, and then, you know, make a quick call to just say, I'm swamped, I'm so sorry, I'll call you tomorrow, bye. And you know, Roy initially lets him get away with it, sort of, but then she, you know, she goes to the diner and she freezes him out. Like, he doesn't acknowledge it when she first comes in, and he's like, oh, that table is free over there. And so she's like, okay, not even a lame-o apology, got it. And then when she leaves, he's like, what's the deal, you two beefing or something? Like, he couldn't even possibly conceive of the fact that it was his actions that made her not particularly warm towards him, and that she must be in a fight with her mom. Come on. But like, just again, the stonewalling and the freezing him out, the like letting him get away with it, but then being passive aggressive about it. The toxic comparison to Dean. Sure, when Dean said he'd call, he always called, but where's the fun in that? Like, just, he's so oblivious to his impact on her and her life and her schedule. Like, a relationship is more than just making out and talking about books, but he doesn't realize that. And, you know, Lorelai is entirely right in this episode to call him out and be like, Rory's one of the best girls, in my opinion, and you don't seem to have the first idea of how she should be treated. But then again, he's awful to her. She's like, I'll tell her you stop by, and he's like, don't bother. Like, come on. And then Rory won't even tell Lane the truth about why she's mad at Jess. It just shows like her passive aggressive attitude is affecting her in her other relationships too. She's not only feeling disappointment with him, but she feels shame for being that girl. He makes her feel unimportant and not like a priority, and it makes her not want to admit to anyone how much of a problem she has in her relationship and how it makes her feel. Once again, she's left to mediate outside perceptions of their relationship because of his behavior.
Yeah, it's not good as well. And I just have to echo what you said. When you can't be transparent about what's going on in your relationship with the people that you should normally trust most around you, seemingly in this case, Lorelai and Lane, who are going to have your back any day of the week because they always have and they always will. But when you see need to start making excuses for your partner to people that you should be trusting the most with that information, holy red flags.
Yep. And of course, the distiller's tickets are a proxy for an apology. And he thinks that allows him to not say the words, I'm sorry for not calling you and not respecting your time. And from now on, I'll do everything I can to call, even if it's just to let you know I'm too busy to meet up. Actions speak louder than words, but they also shouldn't be used as proxies for real apologies. He should have apologized properly.
Exactly. And it sends the worst message possible that Jess will never have to apologize for anything that he does wrong because he can just gloss over it with concert tickets or pizza or whatever it is that's just going to placate Rory in that moment in time. Not healthy.
I want pizza. God, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on, because, you know, we've been going for a long time and we're not even done yet. Pose and fire. Yeah, so not only does he lie to Luke about the deal they had and how much he's going to school versus not going to school, but he lies to Rory, and she ends up believing he's doing fine in school, and then he puts her in a compromising position by lying to her face.
Yeah. Also not great, because you have to know, and you do know at that point in time, that education is one of Rory's biggest, like, check mark. Like, she cares about higher education and about pursuing that. She's obviously gunning to go to Yale. I think it does mean a lot to Rory to have someone who is taking their education seriously as well. So for Jess to lie about it just shows, again, a real disrespect for your partner because you're failing to acknowledge something that's important to them.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this to me. I will so get you back.
No, you won't.
Yeah, I will.
It's hard to fight the receipts. Okay, talk to me about Happy Birthday, Baby, because to me, actually, this one is some of their best moments. And so I will let you have some of the green flags on this one for once.
Well, I appreciate that. First and foremost, again, using Rory's love of food as just a sort of compromise, but it's healthy compromise because he's recognizing we have different movie likes, but if we can watch this, then we'll get this type of food. If we can watch a movie that I like the next time around, we'll get that type of food. And Lane is right there recognizing oh, you guys are so sweet. This is actually really solid communication and compromise. So love that about it. It just shows that, again, they're hearing each other's desires, that they're hearing each other's likes. But what really struck me about it was, and this is such a departure from what Dean ever did, and I'll talk about that as well. Jess has always been very supportive of Rory going to Yale and to pursuing education that goes beyond Stars Hollow High, that goes beyond Chilton. He really supports her dreams and her aspirations, even if it means that their relationship is going to have to take a left turn and adjust as she moves on to that next step in her life. And just that moment when he's like, 22.8 miles. And she's like, oh, you looked it up. I'm not normally one for sappy moments like that, but it's Jess's level of care in that moment. That's his love language, I guess, in that time, as if to say, yeah, I looked exactly how far it is away, so I know how we can continue to make this work in terms of still being able to see each other even when you go off to school. And it felt like such a departure from Dean for me, because with Dean, even just thinking back to Hammers and Veils, it's oh, well, you're spending too much time on extracurriculars, and that takes away from our relationship, and I want it to be about me and the time that we're spending together. And yes, that is important. You do need to spend time with your partner, but again, they are not the only thing in your life. And Dean needed to be more supportive of Rory's ambitions to pursue continuing education and factor in their relationship around that, which Jess always did so much better. So just shout out to him for this as well, and recognizing, yeah, she's going to go to Yale, she's going to go to college, she's going to try and fulfill her dreams. It doesn't mean that our relationship is dead. We're going to make it work. And here's how I'm going to show you how.
Yeah, he was always a little bit better with the finger on the pulse of actually supporting her and getting her to consider the right things, I suppose. Whereas Dean at best was just trying not to get in her way. The whole if she doesn't go to Harvard, it won't be because of me. That kind of vibe where it's just I'll just try not to get in the way. Very different energies. So yeah, I do prefer Jess in that scenario. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up Happy Birthday. I'm
gonna just kick this. Yep, I'm just gonna kick this right back to you to start for the next one, because we go right into Keg Max, which I feel like is even above Swang Song in terms of the problems. And you've made me talk about the problems and highlight them a lot, and I know they exist here, but I'm gonna let you kick it off for this.
Fair enough. As I sort of alluded to earlier, I do like in this episode that Jess does start to make more of an effort to integrate with her friends by getting to know Dave and coming to the FTT EOTD practices. Sorry, Zach, that one's not a winner. So I did enjoy that aspect. And then there was something that was sort of mixed for me that I ended up putting in the green flag column because he did agree to go to prom and take Rory so she could live her dream of going to the Stars Hollow High prom with Lane. And he offered to pay despite the fact that he didn't even want to go. He'll wear a tuxedo even if he's going to change later. She does She even refers to it as like, how's that arm I twisted? Like, she does have to cajole him a little bit to kind of get him to go with the plan. But he did ultimately get there. So I will credit him for that. But, you know, that's about where the good part of this episode ends. And then everything goes to hell from here because he thinks he's got everything out of control. He's too cocky. He ends up getting kicked out of school, which dashes Rory's hopes of going to the prom. So, like, he's good guy Jess until he gets kicked out of school and can't go to prom to begin with. And as if getting kicked out of school wasn't bad enough, he doesn't tell Rory, and he takes it out on her. He's a total crab at the party and kind of ruins her night even before the thing in Kyle's bedroom, which brings me to the thing in Kyle's bedroom. Jesus, like, he straight up will not talk to her, will not confide in her about what happened or how that will impact her when it comes to prom. One minute he's freezing her out, and the next he's trying to have sex with her. Gross. And I feel like the thing in Kyle's bedroom deserves 2 points for the sheer magnitude of how serious that was, trying to push intimate contact in a highly emotionally charged moment for her first time at a random stranger's house. Probably kind of traumatic to her. JK, I'm actually giving it 3 negative points for the additional emotional abuse tacked on at the end. And then, of course, he fights Dean. Dean instigates it, but he could have done more to extricate himself from that or have people help him get Dean off of him, but he doesn't. And then to put the cherry on top of the shitty thing that he just did, at the end of the fight, he just walks away, leaves Rory standing there, hurt and confused. I'm going to drop my invisible mic again.
I'm not going to defend it. Nor would I ever attempt to because it's indefensible. Pressuring someone for sex? Nope. Not ever okay. Using emotional sort of manipulation when you're having a rough day to try and even instigate that further? Nope, not okay. And then responding to a physical altercation, even if it's one that you did not start. No, not okay. Dean was absolutely in the wrong to throw the first punch, but Jess needed to respond better. And like you said, try and just take a step back and not continue to instigate that further. Did not. I've got nothing. Nor should anybody. So just bad, bad, bad.
Yep. All right. Say goodnight, Gracie. Thoughts about that one?
Yeah. How about you own up to the fact that you caused some property damage and that you're going to have to pay for it now? I mean, shout out to Dean to at least be like willing to go back to Kyle's house the next morning and say like, yeah, I effed up. Let me start trying to like work on the fence, work out some sort of financial arrangement with you about what's going on. Jess doesn't do any of that. Doesn't even tell Luke what happened. Luke has to find out about it from a phone call from Kyle's dad being like, hey, needs to be dealt with.
There are Hummels that need to be replaced.
Yes. And then even just continues to try and sidestep taking any responsibility for it when Luke confronts him about it at the diner, as if to say, like, what are you going to do about it? Because here's what Dean's already doing about it. And not that, like, again, to draw any comparisons, but you're not responding appropriately here. So what are you going to do to try and own up to this situation? And Jess is just shirking all of it.
And he's shirking it with Rory, too. Like, they're avoiding each other after all of this. They don't know how to communicate about what just happened. And it's just, like, it really catches up with Rory in this episode. Like, they don't communicate. Like, him walking away from her is basically, like, the last thing they ever say to each other before he leaves. And, after the funeral is also when Dean tells Rory about getting engaged to Lindsay, and Rory gets so defensive when he confronts her about her crappy relationship with Jess. Like, I'm sorry that he treats you like dirt and everyone hates him. That was your choice. And he's like, have a nice life. And she, the last thing she retorts with that is, Jess does not treat me like dirt. She can't even react properly to what Dean is saying because she is so on the defense about how Jess treats her. and the stark difference between the two of them. So, and then obviously we have her telling Lorelai about what happened in Kyle's bedroom. Any thoughts on that whole conversation in the car where she kind of goes off about their communication troubles?
Yeah, because Lorelai is very clearly sensing that something went down in that bedroom that was not above board. She continues to try and push Rory about it to tell her. And then when Rory eventually does, Lorelai is just very clear in saying, first and foremost, not okay. Jess's behavior cannot and should not be acceptable. His manner of attempting to apology for you should also not be acceptable. He's doing a lot of really bad things here. And I will credit Lorelai for acknowledging that Jess is just, again, like a very troubled person. I love the line when she says, like, he probably just can't talk about this because it's beyond the scope of what his capabilities are right now. But that doesn't mean that this all just needs to go away and vanish into thin air. It still needs to be addressed despite Jess's hardships and difficulty in addressing the situation. So you need to talk to about it and you need to address him, whether or not he wants to.
Yeah. I also feel like this is the textbook example of stonewalling. And I love the way Rory puts it. I don't understand. 1 minute he's happy and then he's not. And he doesn't tell me anything ever. I mean, you're supposed to tell your girlfriend things. That's the whole point of having a girlfriend, isn't it? And I'm so tired of fighting, or not even fighting, because he won't fight. He just gets mad and disappears and then comes back. And I don't know how I feel, and I don't like what I do. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to sit around wondering when we're going to talk, if he's mad, why he's mad. I hate this. And it's just like a little bow on it, being like, this is a stonewalling. We're giving you a term for it. Recognize it from here on out. Just, I don't even know if he's mad at me. I don't know why he's mad. I don't know anything because he won't talk. He just sulks and disappears. And yeah, and it causes Rory to hide things from her mom because, again, she's embarrassed. She feels guilt and shame about being treated like this. She feels like it's her fault. She's taking on this emotional burden that she shouldn't. And like you said, good on Lorelai for saying, you can't make him talk. He has to want to. It's hard for him. I don't know that she, like Rory, that is, fully grasped how emotionally deficient Jess was because of his upbringing. So.
Yeah. But then Jess does what he did the first time around and just dips out of the situation. So I want to lead us into Here Comes the Sun and Those Are Strings, Pinocchio, because they really do go hand in hand with Jess leaving and then Rory needing to contend with that and how she's going to respond to it. It again feels very similar to what she did, calling him up from the hockey game, saying like, hey, I have needs that are not being met here. When he goes away again after this second sort of altercation, talk to me about that, about him dipping out, and about Rory's phone call to him, and then expressing again why she's not okay with what has happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate act of stonewalling, to dip without saying a word, and that wasn't fair to anybody. Lorelai has to be the one to break the news to her, which has to hurt, and I don't blame Rory for what she says to him at her graduation. You didn't handle things right. You could have talked to me. You could have told me you were having trouble, but you didn't. And you ended up not taking me to my prom. You disappointed me. You're not at my graduation. You left without saying goodbye again. But that's it for me. That's it for me. And I definitely take issue with her saying, I think I may have loved you, but I just need to let it go. That's not love, dear girl. That's obsession. And I think that kind of really nails the point home that there never really was love there because there wasn't respect and there wasn't communication, and you can't have love without those things. There was no trust. All there was lust and chemistry. And I think it really was just a case of teenage obsession masking itself as love, because you don't know what that is yet. You're too inexperienced to know.
Yeah. And even if there was any sort of semblance of love, it's very cliche, but love, I just will reverse it. Love is not all you need sometimes. It takes more than that to withstand or continue on any sort of relationship, whether it's just a partnership or even a marriage. Like, it takes more than love. It takes communication and effort and genuine care and compassion and patience at the end of the day. There's so much that goes into it above being able to just drop the L word to another person. But I will echo what you said. They were just too young to know any better.
Yeah. Well, that takes us to the end of their actual relationship. And then we've got the few episodes in season 4 and season 6, and then the revival. So I feel like we can kind of just like speed round these mostly because he's kind of in and out. So like between Family Matter and Nag Hammadi is where they found the Gnostic Gospels. I found like 3 red flags. Rory has to find out he's back in town by seeing him sleeping in his car. I can't really begrudge him for it because he doesn't necessarily know if she's going to be around, but it's hurtful to have to see someone who ghosted her back in town out of nowhere like that. So even if it's like nobody's fault, it's still emotionally impactful to both of them to like be back at the scene of the crime and to not talk about it. And speaking of not talking about it, Jess's ghosting at Weston's and the bookstore. He's being a little bitch. He's not confronting the emotional impact he had on her, and he's avoiding her. So he isn't giving her closure or reconciliation or anything. It's just avoidance. And then let's not forget the literal love bomb. You just dropped the bomb and ran?
Yeah, don't do that.
Where'd you learn to run like that?
I mean, I get that saying that to somebody is scary, but like, come on.
Yeah.
A little bit better.
That was crazy. All right, moving on. Last week fights, this week tights. Your go.
Okay. Is trying to make an effort. Like, again, I'm trying so hard to just go to bat for him. I think he's trying to better himself, but he just still has so much more work to do on being a better you so that you can be better for somebody else. I think Jess is not ready to be a partner to Rory or anybody else just because he needs so much help. But he's trying to do it. He's reading a self-help book. He's trying to like better himself in that regard. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you're ready now to be a partner for Rory because you still have not put in the adequate work yet to be what she would need you to be. So it's juvenile almost for him to come back and say like, okay, I think I've gotten to where I need to be right now. Come run away with me because we'll just live our fairy tale life and have our own happily ever after. And I think Rory is very good about realizing, no, because I still have all of my hopes and dreams, and you have not done anywhere near the amount of work that you still need to be doing on yourself at this point.
Yeah, she has no proof she can count on him. She has no idea that he read that one self-help book one time. That's not enough to fix him, quote unquote, to be a reliable partner. And it's naive. It's a rom-com big gesture, but it's not going to work. It's not enough. It's a repeat of that love bomb. And again, he's trying to tell her who she is and that he knows her better than anyone, which removes her agency. And he tries to pull her away from all of her existing life. He hasn't seen her or spoken to her in a year. And he's just like, screw this Ivy League institution. Come squat with me in New York. It'll be great. It's perfect. You're ready. I'm ready. No, neither of you is ready for this. You cannot count on each other. And I don't think he can count on her necessarily either. I don't think she's equipped to help him be the person he needs to be either. So I just think that whole situation was crazy. That was some Delulu behavior, Jess. No.
A little bit. But then we move on to actually just even aside from Rory and Jess is probably one of my top favorite episodes in the entire series is Balalaika's. Talk to me about the yays and nays of that. I feel like there are a lot more things that I can try and defend Jess for in this one, but I will let you go first.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great that he wrote a book and he shows up. He tells her that he couldn't have done it without her. And, you know, it's nice to see that Rory is receptive, that she's in a good enough place to see him again and be like, hey, I'm happy for you. Like, I'm so glad that you're doing well. I think that was a really gracious thing that they could do that with each other. And she's excited. She's supportive of this creative endeavor that he's completed. That's great. And even though he kind of comes in like a wrecking ball and judges everything about her life, at least he remembers her birthday. And, you know, and says, that was a couple weeks ago, right? But once again, then things go to crap because Logan turns up. And I would like to point out something I noticed here, which is there's a repeating pattern because Rory has this tendency to not get around to telling her boyfriends about interactions with exes. She did the same thing with Dean when she just started dating Jess, you know. She had coffee and pie with Dean and didn't mention it until confronted about the fact that they seemed still friendly. And then she didn't tell him about the whole buckle up on Patty thing. I mean, granted, that wasn't a plan they made to do something together, but still. And then now she's doing this again with Logan. Like, what would have happened if Logan hadn't rolled up at that moment? Would she have ever told him that her ex showed up to town and that she went out to dinner with him alone? You know, Logan doesn't get to be mad about her maintaining friendships with exes, but he does get to be upset about her hiding things from him. So, you know, how does he know that she hasn't been in contact with him before this point while they were dating? He was tired, he was pissed off, and he was sideswiped by this. So I don't blame him for being in a bad mood, for being pissy towards Jess. Jess was pissy when he found out about the pie date and the one-woman show, yet everyone acts like Jess is the better guy in this moment when he's engaged in plenty of this behavior himself, and isn't exactly treating Logan with much respect either. Like, Logan's not good to Jess in this episode, but Jess isn't being great to him either. He's being standoffish. He's not contributing to the conversation. He can't just answer a question honestly and fully. And I think that gets Logan's back up more than need be. If he was a little bit more like relaxed and forthcoming, Logan wouldn't have had to be so defensive and sarcastic and snappy at him. He might have just been like, all right, this seems like a nice guy. He seems smart. Like, maybe I'll try to be a little bit better. But he has to pry for information, and it raises his hackles. If Jess wasn't so evasive, Logan might not have been such a dick. So I think it, like, again, Logan is not good in the situation, but Jess escalates it by saying, where should I send it? The Blondic at Yale? He may have come a long way since high school, but he's still immature at this point.
Yep. But I will say I have to applaud Jess, even though you may not, for kind of calling Rory out on saying, like, hey, what I'm seeing from you is not the you that I have ever known. And yes, people are always going to change and adapt over time as they grow older. But I think maybe Jess was recognizing that Rory was changing herself too much to accommodate Logan and him and his lifestyle, which, again, is not a bad thing. Because, again, we're always going to change as we age. But when there's too much of a departure from who you are and who you have always been and the morals and ideals that you have for yourself, when you're completely curtailing those and saying that they're no longer important, even when you yourself know in the back of the mind that they are still important to you just for the sake of somebody else, that's not healthy. There's always change and compromise to be had in a relationship, but you never want to sacrifice who you are or your person for another human being just because that's what's going to keep them around. And I think maybe Jess was realizing, like, Rory, yes, you're growing, you're changing. This is wonderful. This is beautiful. I love it for you. But innately at your core, don't depart yourself too much from who you are and who you have always been, and keep some semblance of that for yourself, because that's what I've always appreciated about you in the past. And that's what you should appreciate about yourself. And I think Jess was honestly just recognizing that.
It's a hard one for me, though, because, again, he comes in after not saying a word to her in years, except, I love you. It had been like 2 years since that happened. And he claims to know her. He says, he tries to tell her who she is and who she isn't in this moment after barely talking to her in 2 years. And he comes in and gives his opinion on her life that she didn't ask for. Like, he doesn't know anything about her struggles or her relationship. And he comes in with this condescension and this judgment because he hates rich people. He is contemptuous of this new phase in her life. And he doesn't know about or acknowledge her burnout, her identity crisis, and he just expects her to be the same person she was at 17 and to live up to like this ideal picture of her that he still has in his head from that time. And I mean, like, I know I changed a lot between 17 and 21. Like, if my high school boyfriend came to me at college and was just like, this isn't you, I would have been like, get out of here, go back to Ontario. Like, nobody asked you. I am not the same person because I've opened myself up to experiences beyond the little town that I grew up in. I learned about politics and world issues, and I met different kinds of people. And like, that's exactly what happens when you go from somewhere like Stars Hollow to Yale. And so for him to come in and just be like, your life is deficient somehow, basically, like, this isn't you. Like, how does he know? He's just projecting onto her. And it's not supportive and it's not healthy.
Okay, well, I think we're going to agree to disagree there, but we can fight that out some other time. I'm sure there's an entire episode that we can have on that in some sort of capacity. But just for the sake of keeping this going, let's truck on to I'm okay, you're okay, and then what we get from Jess in the revival so that we can try and wrap this up as concisely as possible.
Yeah, this one's all red flags for me because Rory goes all the way. Like, this is a 3 to 4 hour trip from New Haven to Philly to get back at her ex, or to get back at Logan, who she's taken back after she thinks he cheated. And she uses Jess in this process. Oi with the terrible coping mechanisms. And on top of it, Jess condones this. And like, I get he's trying to play nice, but it makes the no-fly list because it's deceptive, it's manipulative, and it's condoning using infidelity as a bargaining chip in a relationship, and I'm not here for it.
Okay, fair enough. I will redeem him with what we get in the revival, which is just all above board for me. I wish we had gotten more because I really want more context as to like, how are you really doing, Jess? You seem to be doing a lot better. You've made a lot of really great strides in your life, personally, professionally. Those all seem to be very there and transparent for us. You're still working in, publishing and writing. You can see that in Rory. You're still giving her really solid life advice in terms of saying like, hey, stop working for Naomi Shropshire because that woman is just like a dumpster fire of madness. But maybe try doing some of your own things as well. Do some of your own writing. He gives her book idea to like investigate her own life, which I think is also really great, even though Lorelai is not going to love it and there are issues there. But he's really seeing in Rory, I think, the light and the talent and the capability that was always in her from the start, that she needs to really recognize in herself at this moment in time, considering that she's having a 30s midlife, like in her 30s midlife crisis and not knowing what she needs to do. And so Jess is really helping her work through that. And I think she's recognizing like, hey, like he's really bettered himself as well. She says that she's happy for him and the ground that he has made with his own life. And I think they both recognize like, yeah, we're, not going to get back together. It still is just not going to be a thing. But you're doing well in your life. Let me try and help you in yours. And it's just really beautiful moments that I think we get from them in the revival, hearkening back to what they've built their relationship on in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably have an entire episode on the book. We've alluded to it in the past, but I feel like there's more to go over there. And I was a little bit torn over it because I have some thoughts about it, but ultimately I am putting it in the positive column. I don't love that the idea was kind of to exploit her and Lorelai's lives for a writing project, but writing a book is generally a good idea for Rory at that point. I'm a little mad that she needed him to suggest it to her at all, but that's not his fault. So at the very least, he gets points for helping her get her head out of her ass, whatever form that takes. And he tells her she's still a contender. He supports her, even though she's spiraling. He offers her specific good advice about ruts and not giving up and, getting creative about moving forward with the talents he knows she has. So all positives. And I also give him a point for being stable, nothing permanent. Stable's good. Sometimes that's all you can ask from someone who had an unstable childhood. I'm dubious about his relationship history. We don't know enough about his relationship patterns over the last 10 years to assume that he and Rory are remotely good for each other or compatible as adults. I know I wouldn't be compatible with my high school boyfriend. 14 years is a lot of time to grow and change. And I'm not the same person I was then. And neither is Rory. So Jess can't expect her to be. And if he's pining with that look through the window, like he's pining for a person that no longer exists. So I still truly don't know. The writers did not do a good enough job establishing their compatibility with each other for me to root for them at this point. They would need to do a lot more work to get me on board and make me switch teams. Where we stand right now, I'm just like, I need proof. I need more than this to care about a relationship between them, because, you know, we've just gone through their entire relationship history and it is more positive than it is negative. And so, you know, as good looking as he was in the revival, as much as, you know, you want to root for it. I can't. I still can't get there. I need a lot more to cancel out their negative history and the lack of information, the lack of relationship building that we got in the revival. I think it's easy to just let the moments wash over us as we sit back, relax, enjoy the show. But you know, I'm incapable of doing that. So, like, I actually counted all the shitty stuff that happened between them, because I had to prove my point on this. It's easy to look at charismatic performances and really good looking people and on-screen chemistry, and not clock every little nuance that's happening and the toxic undercurrents that are running through all of this. But I think there's too much bad stuff that needs to be, like, truly proven to be really in the past, and I need to see them as they currently stand before I can remotely care. But let's get into the numbers and wrap this up real quick. Jess appears in a total of 37 episodes in the main series, 2 episodes of A Year in the Life. He was dating Rory for 10 of those episodes, technically from Let the Games Begin all the way through Say Goodnight, Gracie. And there are a few episodes in those where he doesn't appear because the story is doing other things, or he doesn't interact with her and is just interacting with Luke or something. But those episodes ran from November 12th, which is they shoot Gilmore's, you know, the breakup and they're kind of getting together. And then Games Begin was on November 19th. And then his last appearance in season 3 in Stars Hollow was on May 6th. So 34 episodes. We have 36 total main positives depicted in his relationship with her. Great scenes of connection and cuteness. But we had 84 negatives. That is a positive to negative ratio of 1 to 2.3 repeating. So more than double negative to positive interactions. No wonder they crashed and burned. Like, it's, you know, it's an average of like 1 good thing and 2 bad things in every episode. Sometimes it was about half and half. Sometimes it was more or less good, and sometimes it was like overwhelmingly bad. So, you know, when you look at each episode and you look at it in black and white like this, everything on balance for me, with no recency bias, no overemphasis on charisma or performance or chemistry, like, the relationship was like, and that's the thing. Obviously, it's a television show. They want to give us drama. They want to give us the conflict, because it's not always fun to just watch people existing in their normal lives and being happy and content. But we didn't see a lot of relationship building with them. We saw a lot of push and pull and back and forth and building of tension, but we didn't see a lot of relationship building. We had a lot of like them being cutesy together, but we didn't see them alone together having moments of deep intellectual connection or spiritual connection or anything. It's just, you have like a few little moments where it's like, oh, well, they have the same taste in music and they clearly care about each other, and, you know, little things like that. But there wasn't maybe enough building for me. They didn't care to show us the good parts of the relationship. They only gave us the crap. And so it's really hard for me to like find, even more redeeming qualities in their relationship. I mean, again, I like Jess as a character, and I think I think their relationship was really interesting, but not a good mix, not a good pair. Sorry, Team Jess, but you wrong. You wrong.
I'm not wrong, but okay. I will pay you back when we do this exact same thing with Rory and Logan, which we will do at some point in the future. Can't say when, but we will get there, and I will make sure that you are paid back for all of your dumpster fiery things on Jess this evening.
I am quite aware of Logan's shortcomings, but I remain confident that the numbers will come out in his favor. I've started this process, but I haven't finished the full comparison because Logan makes so many more appearances than Jess. It's taken longer to gather it all up, but right now he's coming out ahead in terms of more positive than negative. And again, a lot of it is Rory's perception. Maybe not necessarily like how much we would like Logan or how well we would do with him in a relationship, how much he lives up to our standards of what's like acceptable behavior or whatever, but how they interact with each other. And I think he comes out a lot cleaner than Jess does. And I think you will see it once all the data's in.
Mm-hmm. I look forward to, again, proving you wrong, but that's for another day. In the meantime, if you have had any thoughts about this particular episode, about Rory as a girlfriend, about Jess and Logan and or Dean as partners, please feel free to drop us a comment below and share your thoughts, who you think was in the right, who was in the wrong within any sort of these examples that we've illustrated. We would love to hear your thoughts and your hot takes as well. There is no right or wrong answer. We're just open for discussion and for hearing your takes. So please share them because we look for that.
Indeed we do. And Laura, is there anything that happens to be, happening in a few months that you can get tickets for now?
Nah.
Nothing exciting in the pipeline for Gilmore fans?
Nothing really comes to mind. Oh, wait. The Firelight event, which this mug is not fully correct in terms of where it will be happening in 2025. But if you have not heard the good word, in 2025, we will be celebrating, first off, 25 years of Gilmore, which is wild, but cheers to that every single day of the week. Yes, drink. But the Firelight event will be back for its 10th year this fall in Guilford, Connecticut. Tickets just went on sale for this event about 2 weeks ago now. They are still available. We will include a link to the website in our description below. If you have not purchased a ticket for this event, what are you waiting for? Because we cannot talk about this enough. It is the Gilmore Girls weekend for you. If you are invested in this show as much as we are, you cannot miss this. There will be cast there will be crew there, but even alongside of that, this fandom is the most amazing group of people that I think you and I have ever stepped foot into or have been a part of. Everyone is so warm and welcoming. It's in a quaint little town that Guilford is just really eerily reminiscent of Stars Hollow. The vibes are there. So if you have not bought a ticket, please, again, check out the website below and consider doing so. We would love to see you there celebrating just, again, 25 years of Gilmore with us this fall. In the place that really just brings us back to like our home away from home year round. So go check that out. And we really hope to see you there. If you have any questions about the event, we will also include a link to a Facebook planning group in the description below. If you have any questions about lodging, about needing a ride from the airport, about food, about what packing. The event is going to be like, what to pack, what to bring, costs, what comes with it. There are so many people in this group who are happy to answer any questions that you may have. So just please check that out as well. Just be there with us.
Go through the posts and go through the comments because so many questions have already been asked. So you will get so many answers in there just from scrolling. And like you will just see how awesome the fandom is and how willing everybody is to help each other out and provide that information. And it's lovely. We love it. We've been twice now. This will be our 3rd year. We're looking forward to it so much. Like I'm already prepping. So we hope to see you there.
Yeah, it's great for solo travelers. If you're coming by yourself, you will make so many new and wonderful friends. Moms bring their daughters, girlfriends or wives bring their partners and their husbands, regardless of the nature of your relationship or who you're bringing with you. It's the weekend for you. You will not be disappointed. So please buy a ticket and check it out. And if you have any additional questions that cannot be answered in the Facebook planning group, our email is also below. Please feel free to always reach out to us and ask us a question. And we will do what we can to make sure that you are there, because this is not something to be missed out on. Trust us when we say that.
Yeah, and we've done a few episodes on this. We've had 2 episodes where Jenny has been gracious enough to come on our channel and chat with us about the entire event and the experience and what to expect. And we've had 2 recaps that we've done as well from our experiences, so you can kind of see the vibes from those too. So check that out. Check out the Facebook groups. Check out the Instagram. Yeah, you won't be disappointed. It's, the sticker price might be a little shocking at first, but like, it's totally worth it. Like, don't even think about it. It's awesome. Come.
Yeah. So we hope to see you join us in Connecticut this fall. We cannot wait. Again, just do it. You will not be disappointed. In the meantime, while you wait for that event to roll around, if you are starved for more GG content, you can always go back and watch any number of our previous episodes. We have a lot of really great content for you there as well. And again, just please remember to do all of those YouTube things for us. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel. It really is just one click below. We're always so grateful for that support. And we just love hearing, anything new that you have to say about these episodes as well. So just drop us a comment and share your thoughts.
Indeed. And on that note, we'll see you next Friday for dinner.
Take care, everybody.
Ciao.